A young woman, born into wealth and privilege, lived a life that many people only dreamed of. She was used to having the best of everything: the finest clothes, luxurious vacations, and an endless supply of designer items. Her world revolved around high-end parties, expensive restaurants, and exclusive social circles. With everything at her fingertips, she felt powerful, untouchable, and superior to those who didn't share her lifestyle. One evening, she decided to treat herself to dinner at a fancy restaurant in the city, a place where she was well known for her regular visits. As she walked in, the soft lighting and the sparkling chandeliers created a perfect atmosphere for the rich and glamorous crowd. She was greeted by the maitre d' with a polite smile, and he led her to her usual spot, a table by the window with a view of the city lights. As she sat down, her attention shifted to the young waitress who was assigned to serve her that night. The waitress wore a simple uniform, her hair tied back in a neat ponytail. There was nothing extraordinary about her appearance, nothing that screamed luxury. The heiress couldn't help but let out a slight chuckle, a quiet, almost imperceptible laugh. To her, the woman's job and appearance seemed so far removed from her own world. She felt a sense of superiority, as if the waitress didn't even belong in the same room as her. The waitress smiled kindly and began taking her order, asking if she wanted the usual. The heiress, feeling confident in her position, made a snide comment about how she was surprised someone in a job like hers could keep up with the fast-paced, high-end restaurant environment. She made sure to emphasize how difficult it must be to serve people like her, who were so used to perfection. The young woman, clearly unfazed by the insult, nodded politely and continued with the order, not reacting to the remark. But the heiress felt satisfied with her jab, thinking that her quick wit and status had left a lasting impression on the waitress. She took a sip of her wine, satisfied with the control she felt over the situation, oblivious to the fact that her words might not have landed as she expected. Little did she know, this encounter was about to set the stage for a life-changing turn of events, one that would completely shift her view of the world, and more importantly, how she saw people. That night, as she enjoyed her meal, she had no idea that the story was just beginning. The waitress, though young, had been working in the restaurant for years. She wasn't just there for the paycheck. This job was a part of her life, something she had learned to take seriously. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest work. She didn't mind wearing the simple uniform, and she was used to the hard hours. Every day, she faced customers from all walks of life, from the ordinary to the wealthy. She had learned to treat everyone with respect, regardless of how they treated her in return. She wasn't always in the position she was now. Life had been hard for her, much harder than most people could imagine. She had grown up in a modest home, with parents who worked hard to make ends meet. She had always been taught to value kindness and humility above all else. Her parents, though poor, had never made her feel lesser than anyone else. They taught her that her worth wasn't defined by what she had, but by who she was. When her parents passed away unexpectedly, she was left with the responsibility of taking care of her younger siblings. At just 22 years old, she had to become the backbone of her family. She worked 2 jobs, staying up late to study while still managing to make sure her siblings were fed, clothed, and taken care of. There were days when she felt like giving up, but she couldn't. She knew her family was depending on her. Despite the challenges, she never complained. She found joy in small things: the laughter of her siblings, the warmth of a good meal, and the satisfaction of a day's hard work. She had dreams of a better life for herself and her siblings, but those dreams didn't revolve around wealth or status. They were dreams of stability, of providing a future where her siblings didn't have to struggle the way she had. When she was assigned to serve the young woman in the restaurant that night, she didn't think much of it. It wasn't uncommon for her to serve customers from all backgrounds. She had become accustomed to being judged by her appearance and her job. Some customers were kind, others indifferent, and some, like the woman she served that evening, were downright rude. But she had learned long ago not to take offense. As she took the heiress's order, she smiled politely. doing her best to be helpful, despite the comments she had received. She had heard worse over the years and knew that the woman's words were just a reflection of her own insecurities. The waitress didn't feel anger or resentment. Instead, she felt pity for someone who had yet to understand the true meaning of respect. Ominias. The night went on. The heiress continued to enjoy her meal, unaware of what was happening behind the scenes. The restaurant's quiet ambience, the clinking of glasses, and the gentle murmur of conversation seemed to lull her into a false sense of security. She was still caught up in the moment, oblivious to what was about to change her life forever. In another part of the city, a news story was unfolding that would soon become impossible to ignore. The heiress's father, a businessman known for his wealth and influence, was caught up in a financial scandal that quickly became public. Details of his company's involvement in fraudulent activities began to surface. The news spread like wildfire, hitting the headlines within hours. The family's financial empire, built over decades, was crumbling. As soon as the heiress heard the news, everything she had once known, the luxury, the privileges, the comfort, began to slip away. Her father's company was investigated, assets were frozen, and legal battles began. The heiress, who had always felt untouchable, was suddenly thrust into a world of uncertainty. The lavish lifestyle she had grown so accustomed to was no longer within her reach. The family's estate was seized, and the business connections her father had spent years building were all but destroyed. The heiress, for the first time, felt completely powerless. The friends who had always surrounded her, eager to bask in her wealth, began to disappear. One by one, they stopped answering her calls and began distancing themselves. It became clear that they had only been interested in her for her money and status. She found herself alone in a way she had never experienced before. With her family's wealth tied up in legal matters, she had no choice but to sell her expensive belongings, the designer clothes, the luxury car, the private jets. All were gone in a matter of weeks. The heiress was forced to face a harsh new reality. She was no longer the young woman who could shop at the most exclusive stores and attend high society events. Instead, she was now just another person trying to figure out how to survive without the comfort of wealth. In the midst of this chaos, the heiress found herself looking for work. Her former life of elegance and ease was gone, and she now had to face the reality that she needed a job to make ends meet. She applied for positions, but the rejections were endless. Her experience was in luxury, not in the real world. She realized she would have to start from the very beginning, doing work she had never imagined herself doing. The once high-flying heiress was now left to pick up the pieces of her shattered world, uncertain of where life would take her next. Little did she know, her journey was far from over, and the lessons she would learn in the coming months would change her forever. Days turned into weeks, and the heiress found herself struggling to adjust to her new life. The world she once knew, a world filled with parties, exclusive events, and the luxury of never having to worry about anything, was now a distant memory. She was no longer the confident young woman who could walk into any room and be admired. Instead, she was just another person, fighting to survive in a world she had never truly understood. She found a job, but it wasn't anything like the career she had imagined. She was hired at a small coffee shop, a place far removed from the luxury she had once known. The work was hard and the hours long. At first, she resented every moment of it. She couldn't believe that this was where her life had led her. The once pristine manicure was chipped from washing dishes, and her expensive clothes were replaced by a simple uniform. Her first few weeks were a struggle. She made mistakes, fumbled with orders, and felt out of place. The regulars at the coffee shop, who had no idea who she was, barely noticed her. They came in, grabbed their coffee, and went about their day without a second thought. For someone who had been the center of attention for most of her life, this was a bitter pill to swallow. But as the days passed, something unexpected began to happen. She started to learn things, small things at first, like how to brew the perfect cup of coffee, or how to handle a particularly difficult customer. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. She began to understand the hard work that went into every small task, and she slowly started to appreciate the effort of the people around her. One day, as she was cleaning up after a particularly busy lunch rush, she looked around and noticed the staff. They weren't wealthy, they didn't wear designer clothes, but they were all working hard, laughing and supporting one another. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and they made the best of what they had. It was a humbling sight, one that made her think about everything she had taken for granted before. It was then that she realized something important. She'd been so focused on the material aspects of life that she had completely missed the value of hard work, friendship, and community. The things that truly mattered weren't the designer brands or the expensive dinners, but the people you spent time with and the work you put into your life. Slowly, she began to embrace this new world, no longer focused on what she had lost, but on what she could gain from this fresh start. The transformation wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But every day brought a new lesson, and with each lesson, she became a little stronger, a little wiser. She had no idea where this new path would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. Months passed, and the heiress, now adjusting to her new life, found herself at a community event, something she never would have attended before. The event was for a local charity, and she had volunteered to help set it up, a choice she made out of necessity more than anything else. She had been trying to rebuild her life from the ground up, and while she had made strides in learning to live without the luxuries she once had, she still felt out of place in many situations. But at the charity event, something unexpected happened that would change her perspective once again. As she was helping to organize the tables, she saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was the same waitress she had mocked months ago. She had recognized her immediately, though her appearance was different now. The waitress, no longer just serving food at a restaurant, had become an integral part of the event. She was speaking with the volunteers, offering help, and managing the logistics of the day. She had a confident air about her now, a far cry from the woman the heiress had seen that night. The heiress felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her as she realized the full extent of her past behavior. Here was the same woman she had looked down on, yet she was now leading a successful event, making a positive impact on the community. The waitress was surrounded by people who respected her, who saw her for the strength and character she carried, not for the job she had. The heiress couldn't help but feel a sense of shame for her earlier actions. The waitress noticed the heiress standing off to the side, looking a little unsure of herself. She walked over, a warm smile on her face, and greeted her without hesitation. The heiress, still feeling self-conscious, managed a smile in return. It was awkward at first, but the waitress seemed unfazed, as if nothing had changed between them. "You've come a long way," the waitress said, her tone light but filled with meaning. The heiress was surprised by the kindness in her voice. She had expected the woman to hold a grudge or say something sharp in return, but instead, she was met with understanding and compassion. "Thank you," the heiress replied quietly. "I don't think I've ever truly understood what you've been through. I wasn't kind to you that night." The waitress nodded, acknowledging the apology without making a big deal of it. "People go through different things, and sometimes they act out of a place they don't even understand themselves," she said. "But what matters is that we learn from it and grow." The heiress, moved by her words, found herself opening up about the challenges she had faced in the past few months. She shared how difficult it had been to lose everything, how it had been a wake-up call to see the world through a different lens. The waitress listened patiently, not once interrupting, and offered advice when needed. By the end of the conversation, the heiress felt something shift inside her. She had been so focused on what she had lost that she hadn't realized how much she had gained. Her experience had taught her about humility, hard work, and the strength that came from facing life's challenges head-on, and it was clear to her now that she had a long way to go. But at least she was on the right path. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. She had learned that wealth wasn't just about money, but about the richness of experience, the value of personal growth, and the power of human connection. The heiress knew her journey wasn't over, but she was ready to embrace whatever came next. As weeks turned into months, the heiress continued to find herself in new, unexpected situations that challenged everything she once thought she knew about life. She found herself spending more time volunteering at local charities, doing whatever she could to help others who were in need. It wasn't always easy, and at times it felt like she was moving slowly, but she knew she had to keep going. Her old life, filled with luxury, attention, and convenience, felt like a distant memory now. She was living in a smaller apartment, driving an old car, and spending most of her time working hard at a small job to support herself. What started as a need to survive had slowly transformed into something more meaningful. She had learned that it wasn't the possessions or status that made life worth living, but the way you treated others and how you made a difference in the world around you. She had started to see the value in everyday work, in small acts of kindness, and in being part of something bigger than herself. One evening, after a long day of work, she found herself sitting alone at a small cafe. The place was quiet, with only a few patrons scattered around. As she sipped her coffee, she thought about how much had changed in such a short time. She wasn't the same person she had been when she first stepped into that coffee shop months ago. She had grown, and she had learned, but there was still a part of her that missed the ease of her former life, the comfort of never having to worry about the future. She was lost in her thoughts when the waitress she had met at the charity event walked in. The waitress, now more confident than ever, spotted her sitting alone and made her way over with a friendly smile. "You look like you're deep in thought," the waitress said, taking a seat across from her. The heiress smiled back, a little embarrassed. "I guess I am. It's just hard sometimes to see how far I've come and how far I still have to go." The waitress nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. It's not easy to change, especially when you've spent so much time in one way of life. But you're doing it, one step at a time. They sat and talked for hours, exchanging stories about their journeys. The waitress shared how she had worked her way up in the non-profit sector, now managing several community projects, while the heiress spoke about her new life, the challenges, and the lessons she had learned. The more they spoke, the more the heiress realized just how much she had underestimated the waitress. The woman had been through so much, yet she never complained. She had worked hard to build a life, one piece at a time, and now she was in a position to help others. The heiress had always thought of herself as someone who could make a difference, because of her wealth and connections. But she was beginning to see that real change came from dedication, humility, and a genuine desire to help others, not from the power of money or status. By the end of their conversation, the heiress felt something shift inside her. She realized that her life had more meaning now than it ever had before. It wasn't about the past or the things she had lost. It was about the person she was becoming, and the impact she could make by being true to herself. The two women parted ways that evening, but the heiress knew that their paths would cross again. She had learned a valuable lesson, that real strength doesn't come from what you have or where you come from, but from how you face the world and the kindness you share along the way. Years passed, and the heiress, no longer the young woman, who once lived in a world of privilege, had transformed into someone entirely different. She had spent the last few years learning, growing, and making a positive impact on those around her. She no longer sought the approval of others through wealth or status. Instead, she found fulfillment in helping people, in making meaningful connections, and in creating opportunities for those who needed it most. She had started her own community outreach program, focused on supporting underprivileged families and helping them build better futures. It wasn't easy. There were days when she felt overwhelmed and uncertain about whether she was doing enough. But every time she saw a smile on someone's face or witnessed the difference she was making in people's lives, she knew she was on the right path. One day, while attending an event for her charity, she spotted a familiar face in the crowd. It was the same waitress, the one she had once mocked, now standing in the middle of the room, speaking to a group of volunteers. She had changed too, no longer just the humble woman serving at a restaurant. She had become a leader, someone whose opinion was respected and valued. The heiress couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for her. The waitress had come so far, and in a way, she had played a small part in her journey. The two women met after the event, and for the first time, they stood on equal ground. No longer separated by wealth or social status, they shared a deep understanding of what it meant to work hard, stay true to oneself, and make a difference in the world. The heiress had learned from the waitress the lessons of resilience, kindness, and strength. And now she too had become a person who could inspire others. Their conversation that day was filled with laughter and shared memories of the past. The heiress admitted how much she had learned from the waitress, how her life had completely changed because of her, and how grateful she was for their unexpected friendship. "I never imagined this would be where I'd end up," the heiress said, looking around at the event and the people who were there, all coming together for a good cause. "I never imagined I'd be helping people the way I am now. It's strange how life works, isn't it?" The waitress smiled, understanding exactly what she meant. Sometimes, the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and the people who seem to have the least often have the most to offer. It was a full circle moment for both of them. They had come so far from the days when they had first crossed paths. They had both learned the importance of humility, of hard work, and of supporting others, no matter their background. The heiress had discovered that true wealth wasn't in money, but in the love and respect you give to others, and in the difference you make in their lives. As the event ended, the two women parted ways with a mutual sense of respect and understanding. They knew that their journeys had only just begun, and that there was still so much more to learn and give. But as they walked away, they both carried with them a sense of peace, a peace that comes from knowing you've found your true purpose, and that you've made a difference in the world, not through what you have, but through who you are. Omini.